Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you're doing well. We're continuing our Wayside School is Falling Down series. We're on chapter 12, titled Pencils. Well, Jason borrowed a pencil from Allison. When he gave it back to her, it was full of teeth marks. Allison held the pencil by its point. Yuck, she said. You chewed on it. Jason felt awful. It was very embarrassing to borrow somebody's pencil, then chew on it. Sorry, I didn't do it on purpose, said Jason. You can keep it, said Allison. She dropped the pencil on Jason's desk, then raised her hand. Mrs. Jules, can I go to the bathroom? I have to wash my hands. Jason slobbered all over my pencil. All the children in the class started to laugh. Jason turned red. I'm sorry, Allison. I know it's a disgusting habit. I just can't help it. Don't let Jason touch your books, said Allison as she headed out the room. He might want to eat them. All the children laughed again. Here, you can eat my book, said Jason. Here, you can eat my book, Jason, said Todd. I don't like it anyway. Mrs. Jules made Todd write his name on the blackboard under the word discipline. Jason was so mad at himself that he broke the chewed up pencil to bits. That wasn't a smart thing to do. Everybody, take out a pencil and a piece of paper, said Mrs. Jules. It's time for our spelling test. Jason slapped himself on the forehead. I'm so stupid, he thought. Rodney, may I borrow a pencil, please? He asked. Rodney made a face. All my pencils are new. How do I know you won't eat it? I won't, Jason said. I promise. Better not, said Rodney. She gave him one of her pencils. It was a new and freshly sharpened pencil, and Jason liked the way it smelled. The first word is orchestra, said Mrs. Jules. Jason tried to remember how to spell orchestra. He stuck the back of the pencil in his mouth. Second word, garbanzo. Jason started to chew on the eraser. When the spelling test was over, Rodney's pencil was worse than Allison's. Jason looked at horror. He didn't even remember chewing it. Oh no, he thought. What am I going to do? He stuck the pencil inside his desk. Jason, may I have my pencil back, please? Said Rodney. What pencil? Asked Jason. The one that I lent you, said Rodney. Jason opened his desk and pretended to look for it. I don't know where it is, he said. Mrs. Jules, Jason stole my pencil, called Rodney. Jason, give Rodney back her pencil, said Mrs. Jules. He gave it to her. Rodney examined the pencil. Then she said, You chewed on it! All the children started to laugh. No, I didn't, said Jason. Those are your teeth marks. How can they be my teeth marks, said Rodney. She started to smile. Rodney was missing her two front teeth. So, said Jason, you don't chew pencils with your front teeth, you chew them with the back of your teeth. How do you know that? Asked Rodney. Said Jason. Mrs. Jules made Jason write his name on the board under the word discipline because he chewed Rodney's pencil and then lied about it. And try not to eat the chalk, said Mrs. Jules. All the children started to laugh. Rodney threw the chewed up pencil out the window. It hit Louis on the head. Mrs. Jules gave Damon a stack of worksheets and asked him to pass them out. They contained math problems. Jason had to borrow another pencil. Allison, may I borrow another pencil, please? He asked. Eat my socks, said Allison. That wasn't such a bad idea, Jason realized. If he stuck a sock in his mouth, he wouldn't be able to chew on a pencil. Myron looked at his worksheet. I don't feel like doing this stuff. Here, Jason, you can have my pencil. Thanks, Myron, said Jason, and I promised not to chew it. He hoped he would be able to keep his promise. He thought about asking Mrs. Jules for a Tootsie Roll Pop. If I'm sucking on that, then I won't chew Myron's pencil, and a Tootsie Roll Pop would probably taste better than Allison's socks. He didn't know for sure because he had never tasted Allison's socks. But before he could ask, Mrs. Jules called him. Jason, will you come here for a moment? She said. I think I know how to keep you from chewing on pencils. Jason smiled as he walked to her desk. I'll have a purple Tootsie Roll Pop, he told her. But Mrs. Jules didn't give him a Tootsie Roll Pop. Instead, she taped his mouth shut with heavy-duty masking tape. She had to use a lot of tape because Jason had the second biggest mouth in the class. There, she said. Jason started back to his seat. Aren't you going to say thank you? asked Mrs. Jules. Mm-hmm, said Jason. You're welcome, said Mrs. Jules. Hey, Jason, teased Allison. You look like a mummy. Don't sneeze, said Rodney. You'll blow your head off. And the girls both started to laugh. Mm-hmm, Jason said back to them. He was not being very polite. You better not pull that tape off, said Rodney. You might rip off your lips. And the girls started to laugh again. Jason had never been more embarrassed in his whole life. His ears burned as he set to work on the math problems. They were tough problems, and several times the pencil crashed against the tape, but the tape held firm. Mrs. Jules was proud of her idea. Not only did the tape protect Myron's pencil, but Mrs. Jules also noticed that Jason was quieter than he had ever been. I should have taped all their mouths shut, she thought. Then they would be all nice and quiet. It was such a good idea, she wondered why no other teacher had thought of it. Chapter 13. A Giggle Box, a Leaky Faucet, and a Foghorn. Every day after lunch, Mrs. Jules read a story to the class. Dana hated stories. The last book Mrs. Jules read was about a pig and a spider. The pig was real cute, and the spider was very wise. Dana thought it was a horrible book. It made her laugh too much. Everybody else laughed too, but the problem was that Dana always kept laughing long after everyone else in the class had stopped laughing. It was very embarrassing, and sometimes she broke out laughing at a part that wasn't even funny because she remembered something funny that had happened earlier in the story. John called her a giggle box, and that only made her laugh harder. Once she broke up laughing in the middle of a math test because she remembered something funny that the pig had said in the book. There goes the giggle box, said John. She hated John. But that wasn't the worst part of the book. In the end, the spider passed away. Dana couldn't stop crying, and she thought it was so silly too because in real life she doesn't even like spiders. She squashed them all the time. John called her a leaky faucet. Somebody better call a plumber for this leaky faucet over here, he said. She started to laugh through her tears. Boy, she hated John. Once in music, they had learned a song about a dragon. When the song begins, the dragon's very brave, but then he loses his only friend, so he isn't brave anymore. He just goes back to his cave where he is sad and lonely for the rest of his life. The song always made Dana cry. Well, every recess, John and Joe would chase after her singing that song. She'd run across the playground with her hands over her ears and tears streaming down her face. The bell rang and lunch was over. Dana nervously walked up the stairs to Mrs. Jules' room. Mrs. Jules would start a new book today. She hoped it wouldn't be anything funny or sad. She hoped Mrs. Jules would read a boring story with no jokes in it. When she got to class, John and Joe were standing by her desk waiting for her. Happy birthday, Dana, said John. He was holding a present. It was wrapped in green paper and had a pink bow. But it's not my birthday, said Dana. Well, that's okay, said John. You can have it anyway. Since I'm always teasing you, he and Joe started to snicker. Dana eagerly tore off the wrapping paper. But maybe John wasn't so bad after all, she thought. When she opened the package, it was a box of tissues. John and Joe laughed hysterically. That's not funny, said Dana. She raised her fist and started to chase after them. Mrs. Jules rang her cowbell, and all the children settled quietly in their seats. We're ready to begin a new story, said Mrs. Jules. She held up the book. It's called Stinky. Dana laughed a little, then quickly covered her mouth. It's about a cute and playful skunk, said Mrs. Jules. Oh no, said Dana. She knew animal stories always made her cry. The animal's mother would probably get hurt by some humans, and then the humans would build a shopping center and destroy the animals' houses. She couldn't stand humans, but she knew that was silly because she was a human, and so were all her friends. The only human she really hated was John, but she didn't think he was even human. Mrs. Jules started to read the story. It was such a beautiful day. Stinky and his mother went for a walk across the forest. Hi, Stinky, said Charlie the chipmunk. Hi, Charlie, said Stinky. Come along, Stinky, called his mother. Stinky hurried after her. They came to the road. Suddenly, Stinky heard a noise he had never heard before. It was very loud, like thunder. A car, driven by humans, was speeding towards him. "Look out!" shouted his mother. Stinky stopped in the middle of the road and stared at the onrushing car. He had never seen a car before. His mother pushed him and herself out of the way just in time. Dana was so upset about the story she began to cry. "Uh-oh, there goes the leaky faucet again," said John. He and Joe started to laugh. Dana sniffed and wiped her eyes, but the tears wouldn't stop. She kept thinking about how close poor Stinky and his mother got to being hurt. She pulled a tissue out of the box John had given her and loudly blew her nose. "There goes the foghorn," said John. Dana laughed into her tissue. She blew her nose again, even louder. "It's going to be a really foggy day," said John. The next day, after lunch, Dana hurried up the 30 flights of stairs before the bell rang, so she could talk to Mrs. Jules before class started. "Yes, Dana," said Mrs. Jules. "Can I leave the room when you read today?" asked Dana. "Why?" asked Mrs. Jules. "Because I hate stories," said Dana. "They make me laugh. They make me cry too much." "You don't hate stories, Dana," said Mrs. Jules. "You love stories. I wish everybody laughed and cried as much as you do." "Really?" asked Dana. She couldn't believe it. All this time she thought she hated stories when she actually really loved them. She was glad she really loved stories. Then suddenly Dana made a face. "Oh, yuck," she said. "What is it?" asked Mrs. Jules. "What if I really love John, too?" Next time we read chapter 14, Calvin's Big Decision. Have a great day.